It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I am your host, Austin Peterson, joined as always by the best co-host in the business, Landon Mance from Las Vegas, Nevada. And we are excited to have in studio with us, or on the show with us today, I should say, Sam Richardson, owner of Las Vegas Therapy. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate being here. This will be fun.
Yeah, we're excited for the conversation. Before we jump in, though, let me just explain real quick. If this is somebody listening to the show for the first time, or even for your benefit, Sam, Tycoons of Small Biz is a radio program and a podcast that's put together by small business owners for small business owners. And the reason that we do this is Landon and I both grew up in entrepreneurial families. We believe strongly in small businesses in our country being the backbone of the American economy. And we want to provide a platform for business owners to come in and tell their story, share advice with other business owners who are out there trying to build these businesses throughout the country. Reality is everybody thinks of these large businesses and that everybody works for a big company, but most people in our country actually work for a small business. And small businesses need to get as much notoriety as they can, so to speak. So, of course, today we're excited to have Sam, a tycoon in his own right. And Sam is the owner of Las Vegas Therapy. So, Sam, why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about you personally? I don't know you, Landon does. So tell us, about your family, where you grew up, how many kids you have, how long you've been married, whatever you'd like us to know about you personally.
Sure. Yeah, no, I've been married 17 years now. I've got four kids, ages 16, 14, 12, and 9. So we got a good spread. Presently, I've been in Las Vegas for about 16 years. Kind of grew up all over, lived in Utah, California, Georgia, Florida. So kind of bounced around a little bit, but this is kind of where my roots are for right now, I guess, is Las Vegas. So.
Awesome. So tell us why you lived in so many different places growing up. Did you have a family member in the military, or what was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, no, I get asked that same question, like, military, right? But basically my dad, he just, you talk about working for these big companies. He always worked for these big companies, like Toshiba and things like that in the computer industry. And so whenever he had a job change or a promotion, usually that meant kind of a significant move as well. So that's kind of what bounced us around. And so you guys mentioned you guys are from entrepreneurial families. I'm from the opposite of that. My dad always worked for some huge corporation, and so I'm kind of the only one that's tried this entrepreneurial thing, and it's been a wild ride so far.
Yeah. So tell me about your wife's background. Did she grow up in an entrepreneurial family, or her dad or mom worked for large companies too, or what was her background?
No, same deal. I mean, she was born and raised here in Vegas. Her dad worked for Las Vegas Metro Police for 28, 29 years, something like that. And then her mom, she was a dental hygienist, and I guess she kind of worked for a dentist office, which I guess we could say is more small business, but same deal, same dentist for pretty much like 20 or 25 years, just kind of stayed in one spot. So they were very much kind of rooted down here, and they didn't move at all. So very opposite from my upbringing there.
Yeah, my wife was the same way. So my wife's father worked for Ford Aerospace, which is just an aerospace engineering company that was owned by the Ford Motor Company. And he spent a few years before that for a couple of other engineering companies, but he was 26 years at Ford Aerospace. And so, me starting our first business when we had a 9-month-old was very scary for my wife. She was very uncomfortable with the thought of it. Her dad had a regular paycheck every 2 weeks or every week, whatever it was then. And now, I tell people this all the time now, he's been retired since 1989, I believe it was, or 1990. So he's literally been retired longer than he worked there. And still receiving a pension from them. So still receiving a regular paycheck from them. So it was a huge departure for my wife to be okay with that entrepreneurial background.
Yeah, no, I get that. I worked for the county for Department of Family Services for about 5 years. And that's just what we did, right? The idea is just get on in the county, stay on for 30 years, live off that pension, till you die, basically. And when I decided to quit working, for the county there, I remember my in-laws just, they're like, they kind of, I think they talked to my wife a little on the side. They're like, what's wrong with this guy? Does he not get it? Does he not see like all the benefits that come from working for, for the government or for the state there? And yeah, so it's, I get the security. We would always joke around and call it the golden handcuffs, but I totally see the allure of that security. So,
yeah. So to ask you a question in a format that you're comfortable with, how does it make you feel, or how did it make you feel to transition from working at the county to starting Las Vegas Therapy?
Well, I guess I need to fill in a little space in between. Like when I stopped working at the county, I worked for other, companies, as it were. It wasn't until 3 years ago that I actually just started, my own company. And so I always was, kind of hoping to piggyback off of the security of somebody else. And so, even though I was going from one kind of big company to the next, it was still risky. But yeah, when I finally made this jump of, okay, I'm going to just do it on my own. How do I feel? I felt nervous. I guess I feel a lot of the same way I do regularly now. Like there's some nervousness, there's some anxiety, some second guessing, am I doing the right thing, or, am I reinventing the wheel again, but I'm assuming that kind of comes with the territory maybe, but yeah, it was nerve-wracking for sure, especially when I decided to really just kind of do my own thing.
Well, I'll make a comment here. So I don't know Austin's wife as well as I know Sam's, but what I do know is that Austin's wife, Robin, is maybe not quite as outspoken as Sam's wife. So I would imagine that, the conversation with Sam and his wife, I imagine she might have said something to the effect of, yeah, go ahead and start this. But, if you fail and this doesn't work out, I'm going to do something, insert something here that is some physical pain inflicted upon you. So,
yeah. Yeah, no, she's fiery like that. Yeah. If anybody that meets my wife, the quick adjective is outspoken. She's not one to keep quiet on anything there. But yeah, when we decided to kind of make this jump, it was very similar to what Landon's saying. She's like, yeah, okay, we can do this, but you better figure this out quick. Like you're taking the security away. You better be sure you know what you're doing, or find out to know what you're doing soon. So
right. Yeah, she's an awesome person, but yeah, she's very she's a spitfire for sure,
to say the least. Yeah,
in a really good way though, So yeah, so Sam, talk to us a little bit more about that. So when you worked for these couple different firms, as you were kind of trying to figure some stuff out, obviously what you were doing wasn't working in the sense of you had some inclinations that you might be able to do things a little bit better, a little bit differently. So walk us through that that process where you were doing what you were doing and you came to the conclusion that, okay, I now am confident that I can start up my own thing and I can do this better. I can do this differently. I can change the model. Just kind of walk us through your thought process there.
Yeah. So for me, I guess I kind of got to a point where I felt that, the work I was putting in, not just with, how I met with clients and the kind of therapy I was doing, but especially with, more the idea of like bringing new clients in, like bringing in new referrals and everything. I just felt like the company I was working for, they weren't doing a good job at that. at all, and the revenue portion that they were taking just really wasn't, didn't make sense, for how much work they weren't doing for me as it were. I mean, they would do good with, scheduling or billing, but I guess for me, I kind of got to this point where I thought, not that I could do it better than them, but I don't know, like something just clicked one day where I was like, I could do this. I think, I've been a therapist for 16 years. The first 12 years, I just thought I needed to work for somebody else. It was kind of, maybe this was my upbringing. Like, that's just what you do. My parents didn't ever say one thing ever about potentially owning, a business on their end or talking to us about it. So I just thought, if you get a job, work for someone else and that's it. And so, it's about 4 years ago where I thought like, okay, I think I could do this. And I was able to see enough of behind the scenes of what their marketing stuff was like, what their scheduling and billing processes were like. And I thought, okay, this isn't something, beyond me. I think I could, kind of figure this out, and especially figure it out in a way that I thought would fit best for, just kind of the clients I wanted to see moving forward. And so once I got to that point, I just kind of started, I started down this rabbit hole of trying to start my own business and trying to Google and YouTube and try not to make too many mistakes, which I made plenty of. But there's just this, I remember like there's just like this specific day where it just tipped of like, oh, like it was like this. I mean, it's not a new idea. It was a new idea to me, I guess, of like, oh, I can work for someone else if I really wanted to. Like, I don't have to be shoveling away so much of the revenue to somebody who's doing something that I think I could do on my own too. So, or just do it in a way that's cheaper or more efficient for me. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So, all right. So you came to that conclusion that you were gonna do this. You're gonna start some up. Las Vegas Therapy is born 3 to 4 years ago. So, who are you guys? What do you guys do exactly?
Yeah, so we're a group of therapists. We specialize mostly in treating relationships, trauma, and or PTSD. We work a lot with depression, anxiety. Those are kind of like the 4 main reasons most folks will go see a therapist. We also have a niche in working a lot with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, so like postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis, stuff like that. But so we do that. I'm a training site. There's myself and a couple of supervisors I have hired on that are fully licensed, but of the 16 therapists we have hired on, they're kind of coming on to be able to gain some experience and get some good supervision to kind of help them develop and grow and eventually be fully licensed themselves. We're also an internship site for UNLV, for the Marriage and Family Therapy program. So it's kind of like you got myself and a couple other fully licensed folks, and then a lot of people that are kind of new, but at the same time, we're able to kind of pick and choose who we bring on. So we've got a really good group. It's kind of interesting as we grow. It's also just trying to figure out, okay, how can I grow in the best way, not just for the sake of growing, but growing in a way that matches our mission. But yeah, that's kind of who we are in a nutshell. Like I said, especially with those 4 areas that I talked about, what we want to be really good at.
Right. Do you guys do counseling for business partners in the financial services industry? I'm asking for a friend.
I don't want to name names, but his name is Austin Peterson, right? Yeah, I mean, we do counseling. That's the interesting thing with this kind of job is because we have a mix of the type of clients coming in. A lot of them are insurance, based referrals, but then we have a lot of cash pay also, and so we kind of have a wide range. We have folks that are kind of lower socioeconomic status using Medicaid, to kind of come in. And then on the other end, we've got, some really kind of more affluent crowd that's able to kind of do more of the cash pay. So yeah, so whether it's financial guys like yourselves, but yeah, we have a pretty wide range of folks coming in here.
Gotcha. Well, I got one more question, then I'll pass it back to Austin. I know he's loaded up some good questions for you.
Okay.
So you talked about kind of you coming to the conclusion that you wanted to start this thing, obviously executing, taking action, which was, starting the business. Talk to us about the evolution of of when you started. I'm guessing that when you started, it was just Sam Richardson, therapist, and now you've got, a dozen or more, people, that are on your team and or kind of working underneath you. So talk to us about how that's evolved over the last couple of years, and maybe some of the decisions that you've had to make to, in your words, kind of grow this, in a smart way.
Well, it depends on how you're defining smart. I don't know how smart it's been, but no, you hit the nail on the head. At first, it was just me. When I very first registered with the state, it was just a sole proprietorship, and basically Sam Richardson, and that was it. Like it was just kind of me seeing clients. But then, what I noticed was, especially once I got approved to help people get supervised to become fully licensed, just kind of some interesting opportunities came up to be able to, not just provide supervision, but then to maybe also have people come in and work under me. I mean, once I had a waiting list going, I thought, well, I can send these people out, but maybe I can kind of catch them and, maybe kind of catch some of that revenue too. So as we kind of, as I kind of started to add more folks, I started to, need more office space. And I mean, at first I was just in this executive suite, and now I'm in an office. We have 12 offices in here, but it really was just kind of this interesting thing where, like, I didn't plan on growing. Like, it wasn't like when I first, got a business license, like the idea wasn't to have like a group practice. Like, I just wanted to, not be paying so much money to the person I was working for. So there was just kind of these interesting opportunities that would just kind of land in my lap to have people, join the team, or even with, getting into a bigger office space. It just, I had a buddy, and, he's a doctor. And he's like, hey, I got office, I got a couple extra offices in my clinic if you want to, put some of your therapists in there. And so it was, like I said, it was never this idea to try to grow. It's just as things kind of progress, these opportunities would just land in my lap, and I would try to take advantage of them there. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like key moments where I thought, okay, here's how I want to grow, or here's what I'm going to do to grow. It probably wasn't until the last 8 or 9 months when I actually started to try to be more strategic on how I'm trying to grow in the direction we're heading. Before, it's kind of willy-nilly a little bit, I think, and maybe adding people that may shouldn't have been added, or, like I said, just growing for the sake of growing as opposed to trying to grow and have like a real specific, niche that we're trying to help out there.
Yeah. So I think, honestly, the story that you're telling is pretty common in somebody that's starting a business, no matter what that business is. In the first few years, there's decent amount of trial and error. You're just focused on making sure that you keep the lights on, and, not necessarily focused on what I do next. Right.
Yeah.
I will tell you that, 3 years to 16 therapists, that's pretty phenomenal. So you should pat yourself on the back a little bit and realize that you built something that's pretty remarkable here in a short period of time. And so I want you to talk to us a little bit about how you've done that, right? Because here's the thing, like Landon and I have worked with medical professionals throughout our career. Most medical professionals don't, in their area of study, don't have any background in running a business. They may take one class on, business or accounting or finance or something, but they really don't have a background in running a business. Most medical professionals that go to medical school or whatever, school they end up going to are clearly smart individuals. But unfortunately, and this is going to sound somewhat disparaging, but many of them think, well, I'm really smart, so I don't need outside help running my business or handling my finances or doing any of that kind of stuff because I'm a really smart person and I can figure it out on my own. And so talk to us a little bit about what that's been like for you personally, and then also jump into how you've grown the patient base, right? Because if you go back a decade, I would have thought that dentists and medical professionals across the board, you sign up and you get approved by an insurance provider and people start showing up at your office. But there's more to it than that. So talk to us about those two things, if you would.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, especially with the idea of like I'm a smart guy. I mean, I know I'm not the dumbest guy in the room. I know I'm not the smartest guy though either, but yeah, I didn't have one class ever on finance, accounting, business. I mean, my undergrad was in psychology. My master's is in marriage and family therapy. And I just had, I really had no idea. I mean, I think one evening, I think I told Landon, I said, man, for someone that owns a business, I really have no business owning a business. Like I'm the last guy that should be trying to do this. Cause I'm just flat out ignorant, as to what, I remember somebody asked me one time, like, well, what's your business plan? Did you write out your business plan? And I was like, what's a business plan? I thought you just, register with the state, get a business license. And like I said, just try to keep the lights turned on, try to make enough money to be able to pay the bills. And that was it. I think just, with the idea of trying to run a business, like I said, for me, it's been a lot of growing pains. Like I said, a lot of reinventing of the wheel. I learned way too late, I think, just the importance of reaching out, talking to people. Yeah, I'm not going to go back and get an MBA. That's okay. But, just even the idea of like, reading some business books, like that, just in the past 6 months, I think I've, tried to delve more into that. That's helped me out, especially with trying to be more strategic and especially trying to help me utilize my time better. One of the best things I remember Landon told me to do, he says, write down an organizational chart of, what your business is right now, all the roles that are there and who's filling that role. And I remember doing that. And like, I had this, so I have, marketing and accounting and scheduling and billing and networking, all this stuff. And my name was under every single role. I was like, man, no wonder I'm so stressed out and feel like I don't know what I'm doing, because I never had a chance to focus on just doing one thing, but yeah, I agree. I felt the sting of that pretty soon when I had that. I talked about that tipping moment of like, oh, I think I can do this, and then it didn't take very long for me to realize like I really assumed I knew a lot more than I thought I did, and it hit hard pretty quick there. When it comes to a patient base, that's one of those things where it's like the never-ending equation. Like I'm always trying to figure out like, okay, how can we, get more clients coming in, that can pay more revenue. I mean, there's the idea of just get on an insurance panel. I mean, we were doing that kind of during the pandemic, when it started, when we decided to try to get credentialed with some insurance companies, and we just had a ton of roadblocks, and just kind of dead ends there. Everyone was on pause because of the whole coronavirus thing. They wanted to just wait to see what they wanted to do there. But that's been really useful though, when it comes to just filling caseloads. Like insurance it's easy. We just get a lot of calls that come in from that. But, as I mentioned, most of the therapists working here, they're not fully licensed. And so that kind of limits you on the type of insurance panels you can get on. So we're able to get on some local ones like Health Plan in Nevada, Nevada Medicaid. They'll credential licensed interns. But because they're interns, the reimbursement rate is quite a bit lower. So if I'm trying to pay them and also pay myself enough from them, from the sessions that they do to keep the business moving, it's a balancing act there. But I mean, right now we're just trying to figure out how can we, again, still use that to get the caseloads filled, but also balance it out more with kind of some higher paying cash pay clients there. Like I said, I think that's, building the patient base, that's the constant equation. At the company I worked at before, I started my own. I mean, that was it. Like they intentionally didn't want to do any insurance panels. They wanted it to be just cash pay, and they wanted to be charging on the higher end of cash pay. And it was just the constant, just kind of, I mean, I don't want to say headache, but it was just kind of a headache. Like that was like I felt like that was the only problem we were trying to solve, and that was it. Patient base now, it's a mix of insurance. It's a mix of, word of mouth. I mean, I try to network as best I can just with other therapists I know, letting them know like what I'm specialized in, or just other, third-party referral systems. For example, like we get a lot of referrals from church groups, so ecclesiastical leaders, they'll have a lot of people coming to the pastors or bishops or whatnot, because they need help with their marriage. So they're going to their ecclesiastical leader for that. And a lot of them do a really good job, but then, sometimes they feel like they're in deeper water than they should be. And so just kind of, that's been something that's been really helpful too. We get a lot of ecclesiastical referrals from these church leaders that they'll realize pretty soon, like, man, I'm not a marriage therapist. I need to send someone out. But yeah, like I said, it's the never-ending equation, I think, to try to solve of how can I just get more clients paying at a higher rate. Again, insurance is great, but you can feel like you're scraping pretty soon if you're just going to the insurance route and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant battle, right? And I think, one of the things that I've learned fairly recently with a client of mine is that there are the lower reimbursement rates based on what your credentials are, which makes sense. I just hadn't thought about it, right? And this one happens to be in a drug and alcohol treatment center, and so the designations or whatever the credentials that they have is what dictates their reimbursement rates. And so he's trying to find people that he can bring on that have the higher credentials so that they can get the higher reimbursement rates from the insurance companies. Mm-hmm. So it's, I think that there's always this balance and different things that you have to do specific to your field. But the reality is on the business side, right? So Landon talked about that org chart, which he stole from me, by the way. But he those types of things are running the business. And that is, it doesn't matter what industry it is. Those are struggles that every business owner has to deal with, right? And I mean, Landon too well that you don't want to hire him. Trust me. We always, I'm just messing with you. No, I was going to say Landon and I serve clients together as a team, but this once, because Landon too well, I'd be willing to work with you personally.
Awesome.
No, go ahead, Landon. Sorry. I had to throw that one in there. I couldn't help myself.
It's all right. We've seen better come from you. So we've got higher expectations as the show unfolds.
Yeah, I blew it. That's all right.
So yeah, Sam. So I think something that is very different with you than other business owners that are only 3 or 4 years into their business is that you are looking through a different lens. A lot of businesses that are 3 to 4 years in on their journey are scrambling. They're working very long hours. They're trying to figure a lot of different stuff out. And you're looking through this lens of, okay, as I grow my business, how do I do this strategically, efficiently, and effectively, which is very different than a lot of business owners that are at the same point in time on their journey as you're on. So you mentioned some business books that you've read that have kind of helped you to look at things a little bit differently, but kind of help us understand with where you stand today. What are some of the things that you're thinking about strategically with your business as you continue to grow it, over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think, this might be something that you stole from Austin also, but I remember you used this term. You said, Sam, you want to kind of work towards being operationally irrelevant. Yeah, that I remember that just like stuck with me. Like it just nailed me. I thought, oh, that's what it is. Like, what's that book? The 80-20 principle, how it says, companies, they make 80% off their revenue off of like just 20% of what they're doing. And like, that was me. I was like, man, like the majority of the revenue for Las Vegas Therapy was, initially, just off of my caseload, and that was it. And so if I really wanted to kind of get these business, the processes of business, working, I got to try to figure out a way to be, operationally irrelevant there so I can focus on these other things. But so I think strategically, that's probably my focus right now. I think, well, it's twofold what I'm really focused on right now. One is, back to that marketing, like how can I just increase, my client referral base, but then also how can I, what processes do I need to have in place so that somebody, either a process is managing it or specifically a different person other than me is managing it, so that so it's not just so heavy on me. I had a talk with a consultant from Dave Ramsey, and he kind of said the same thing. They said, hey, we had to figure out how to have non-Ramsey revenue coming in. Like everything was kind of dependent on him, and it kind of matched the pickle I was in. But so yeah, I think strategically moving forward, I'm trying to figure out how can I be operationally relevant, so I can, focus on the business side of things and making sure that that's going well. Strategically, like our mission is to really grow and develop like amazing therapists. Like that's why that's kind of the hope. I can only see so many clients a day, but if I can grow 15 therapists into people that are really good at what they do, there's a lot more of a reach. So this kind of goes back to that operationally irrelevant. If I'm tied up seeing clients all day long, because I got to make sure I have a certain revenue to pay the bills, I can't focus on being able to do the supervision I want to do. And so that's probably our two main strategic things right now are focus. I'm trying to be able to focus my time on what's going to be most useful, for Las Vegas therapy. And then, and like I said, and just the marketing thing. So I don't know if I kind of rambled on for a little bit there. Sorry, but I don't know if I answered your question there.
Yeah, right. So if you were to kind of look at how your time is spent right now, what's the breakdown of Sam working in the business as a therapist versus working on the business as the leader, of the business?
Oh, it's out of whack for sure. I mean, let's say I have a typical 40-hour work week. I'll spend 26 of those hours, actually seeing clients, like just my own caseload. I'll spend around 10 to 12 hours of supervising other therapists, and then it's kind of like I'm trying to squeak into the cracks, working on the business, as it were. So that's where, when I really started to see that clearly, like I said, that's when kind of gave me the aha. But yeah, I think definitely the vast majority of my time is spent on not running the business, but just being part of the business, as it were. Not necessarily being, the leader or the owner of Las Vegas Therapy.
Right. Have you calculated how much time you spend every week making trips to Carl's Jr. to get double Western cheeseburger meals?
Too much. Yeah, probably too much. I mean, that is one thing. My wife is she's like, what, she'll say, oh, I text you or I sent you this email. I said, I didn't get to it. I said, hey, I've got, 5 minutes in between sessions. So if I'm working 8 hours that day, I've got a pretty limited, I have 5 minutes an hour to look at an email or whatnot. But I do make sure I get that time to Carl's Jr. I might not get to emails, but I do. I tell you that Western bacon cheeseburger, it just hits different, man, on another level. So
yeah, absolutely. So all right, yeah, I like it. And by the way, the comment that you just made about the breakdown of your week, that's very normal. Austin and I fall into that same routine a lot, running our own, business, because we get so tied up serving the clients and working with the clients and working on the cases that we're working on that sometimes it's just, it's hard to it's hard to make the time to do some of the strategic activities that that you need to be doing, because you get so caught up in the business. But just having that thought process of this kind of looking at the business through this strategic lens and making decisions, business decisions based on the strategic vision, and then being tactical in how you make those decisions is huge, because you've only got so many hours in a day, and so you have to find, like you said, you got to strike that balance of working in the business versus working on the business. And just to be clear, operationally irrelevant, I stole that from a guy. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Josh Patrick. and he's a guy that's in our industry, but he does a lot of business consulting type of work. And I've listened to his podcast, and I stole a bunch of stuff from my buddy Josh. So shout out to Josh for that term. But yeah, it's something that when I heard that term for the first time too, it was like light bulbs, alarm bells going off. Like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, it did. It just stood out. Now, you guys have been asking me questions. Can I ask a question really quick? So when it comes to, right? It's a one-way street here, right?
Don't put the script on me, Mr. Therapist.
That's how I get you, right? That's 3 years of school right there. That's the best I got. I guess, hopefully there's, there's some other, business owner that's kind of the similar boat I'm in. And I'm sure you guys have maybe gotten this question asked a lot when people say, hey, I'm having a hard time finding, that time, or they're not just finding, making that time. Mm-hmm. What are your go-tos of like, either, refocus on your vision or, have it tattooed on your forehead of why you're doing it. Like, what do you guys typically say? Hey, here's why you got to make that time. Like, what tends to stick or work with most folks?
You want me to go first? You want to go first, Landon?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I'll tell you what I do personally, and I recommend this to business owners as well, is calendaring is huge for me. And so if it's on the calendar, then it's going to get done. If it's not on the calendar, it's not going to get done, right? And so the reality is right now you're at this tipping point, right? And so there's probably going to have to be something that gives. It's either that you're going to work an extra hour a day to do these types of things, right? And that's sacrificing time with your family, or you're going to see one less patient per day to be able to do this. And so you've got to look at it and decide which sacrifice makes the most sense for you. And if it's seeing one fewer patient per day because your family is your priority, then great, as long as, of course, seeing that one less patient per day doesn't throw off your whole revenue model and you all of a sudden got a problem paying bills, right? So without knowing enough about your business, I can't say what the right answer is. I can tell you your wife's going to say that you're going to see one less patient a day because you're going to be home helping with those 4 kids, right? But that's what it comes down to, is there is some sacrifice to be made. Because here's what I look at. Landon talks about that operational irrelevance and trying to build to that. And by doing that, you're really building the enterprise value of your business, right? 3 years ago, you were Sam Richardson Therapist. Today, you're the owner of Las Vegas Therapy, and Sam Richardson is a therapist inside of that company. But a name like Las Vegas Therapy, think about how many different areas there are of Las Vegas, right? I don't know Vegas well, but I know there's Summerlin and there's Henderson and there's, downtown. There's all these different areas where you can have different offices that are all part of Las Vegas Therapy, and they're going to generate revenue whether you're there or not. That's where you're building to. And are you willing to make the sacrifice in one way, shape, or form to build that business rather than, knowing that you're helping more people by doing that, but you got to build the business rather than be the therapist, if that's ultimately what you want to do. Because you can always just back it all down to being just Sam Richardson, the therapist again, generate the same revenue and call it a day. But if you're wanting to build up enterprise value, you got to make that sacrifice and put it in the calendar.
That's super helpful, especially the whole mission piece, right? Like if I really want to help more people, going back to like what initially got me decided to bring people on was, well, I can only see so many people a week, but if I got more people on, there's that much more reach there.
Yeah.
That's helpful.
And I'll just take that one step further, because what he said there is dead on, right? If you want to step outside of the business more and work on more strategic initiatives, you have to make the time, because you're never just going to find the time in between your therapy sessions. Like you said, you've got 5 minutes in between sessions and you need to take a breath, drink water and eat food. So, when are you going to make the time in between those sessions? You're not. And so I like to, when I'm thinking about business decisions like that, I like to attach numbers to it, right? So if you know that your mission is, we had this guy on the show several months ago, Brian, I think it's is it Bogart, Austin, or Bogart?
Bogart.
Yeah, Bogart. Just a exceptional guy. He's a coach. He coaches high-level executives and business owners around different areas, and just a phenomenal guy. And his mission is he wants to impact 1 billion lives. So he knows directly, right? He probably cannot impact 1 billion people's lives. But if he impacts, 1,000 or 100,000 people's lives underneath him, and each one of them goes out and impacts 2 or 3 or 5 people's lives, all of a sudden now, you've got millions or tens of millions of people, right? And that's how you could kind of think about this. Is what is it that you're trying to create here? And if you're trying to create this business of impacting, 1 million lives or 1 million couples in the Las Vegas area, as an individual therapist, you could probably never do that. But if you train 50 high caliber therapists that are giving the same level of attention, the same service that you are giving your clients, and because that you're doing a great job with them, well, all of a sudden now you've got 50 people doing that. And this reality of affecting 1 million couples in Las Vegas becomes a lot more achievable.
Yeah, I don't know. I got all sorts. Sorry, and this is what you get for having a therapist come on board. I get all my thinking questions. It's what I do all day. So this is y'all's fault. You guys both kind of hit a lot on mission, right? Like how many people do I really want to impact? Like what's what am I not just like a numbers like revenue in cost out. When it goes to like making that time, getting it on the calendar, like how often is having a specific focus on that mission of no, I'm doing this. I'm going to take this hour to not see a client because I'll see one less person in this hour, but it will help me impact 10 more people or however many. How much do you guys talk to your clients about just, have the mission just kind of ever present, in your focus there?
It's one of the top things that we talk to our clients about, right? I mean, this isn't a commercial for us per se, but
right.
The reality is most people, when you say I'm a financial advisor, they have in their mind what that person does, right? And it doesn't matter what you envision right now in your mind. That's not what Landon and I are, right? We spend an abundant amount of time working with our business owners on their mission, their vision, and their values, because those 3 things are going to lead them to a greater enterprise value, right? We still manage money. We still help people with their insurance needs. We help them with their estate planning needs. That's all part of what we do. But because we work with business owners specifically, and most business owners in this country, 80% or more of their net worth is tied up in their business and not in other investments. Well, we're going to help them grow that business to where it needs to be so that they can become financially independent either prior to or at the time of the sale of that business. And so it's in our best interest to help them grow that business efficiently so that that enterprise value is as great as it possibly can be. And it's these day-to-day things that you've got to do. And that's the heart of it, is the mission, the vision, and the values of your company and what you want to accomplish. Then it's let's go to work on the technical side of how to accomplish those things.
Love it. Makes sense. I mean, my mind's just kind of going back to like that hedgehog principle. What are you passionate about? From Jim Collins. What's that book? Better from Good to Great.
Good to Great.
Yeah. Just what are you not just good at, but what aligns with your values? What are you passionate about? Yeah, that rings true. So
what do you think? If we're looking out 5 to 10 years for Las Vegas Therapy, I mean, what do you want this thing to morph into? Have you thought about that?
I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes it just depends on the stress of the day. When it's really stressful, my mind goes to, well, I'll just have it be just me again. Just really simple. My clients, cheap rent. That's it. I mean, that doesn't happen too often, but when I'm looking at 5 to 10 years from now, I see a couple of things. I mean, one, and also you kind of touched on that idea of, having multiple sites throughout the valley, where I can have, my BHAG goal was to have 50 therapists, working for me, over the next 2 years, and have, 4 to 5, different sites. That's kind of what I want size wise. But then when it comes to me individually, I guess, like I said, I'm not business minded. I don't have an MBA. Like I just need to kind of have those processes and people in place that are kind of doing that, so I can focus on, what I am good at. Like I'm good at supervision, I'm good at therapy, and so, I'd love to just either be training other, therapists to do that supervision, so that we can just have that much more growth. I do love doing therapy though too. I mean, I worked with a couple this morning, and let's see, 2.5 months ago, they were on their way to go, sign divorce papers, and they come in today. They're like, we had no idea this could, we could have this much change in 2 months, and like we're falling in love again. Like that's where it's weight in gold, right there. And so, like, I would love to have, just kind of a really robust multi-site, company going where I've got, 10 therapists at each site. But then I would love to just see myself just focusing on just training therapists and just still meeting, with people. And that's the double-edged sword for me. Like, also you talked about, like, I've got to schedule it in, like what's the cost of me taking, not seeing a client? Like for me, it's like the cost of not seeing the client, but like, I love doing therapy. Like it's hard for me to not do. Like I don't know it's not just fun. I just really enjoy it. And so it's hard to, and I don't love business, and probably that's because I just, like I said, I like to reinvent the wheel a lot. So I'm always on the learning curve, but my guess would be I'm not the first person that's kind of expressed that they just like doing their job, and the business strategic side of things just aren't, they're not, it's a foreign nature to me. It's just hard for me to do.
Honestly, there's not a single right answer. I mean, whatever's right for Sam is what's right for Sam, and that doesn't, that you could just go back to seeing patients yourself and get rid of all the other headaches if that's what you choose to do. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to build an enterprise and you want to impact more lives than you physically can impact on a weekly basis, then the enterprise is where the focus has to be. And so you've got to make that decision. The reality is you can outsource a lot of those things that you're not good at, right? Whether it's internally outsourced to somebody in your organization or it's externally outsourced to help you with the things that you're not good at. That's where a lot of business owners, regardless of industry, get in trouble, is they just try to tackle it on their own and don't realize that they're not good at something and that they're better off outsourcing, right? Because you've got to be able to make a decision that's emotional in nature potentially, right? Because you love therapy, but you also have to be able to look at it from a logical standpoint and say, okay, if I'm taken away from seeing one client a day because I'm going to focus on the business, how do I replace that revenue? And 2, is it worth it to me to figure out a way to replace that revenue? Right? Because you can replace that revenue by having 2 therapists that maybe aren't as credentialed at, the same level as you are, but you can get the same revenue out of the 2 of them seeing clients simultaneously versus you seeing one on your own, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know the exact numbers, but there's ways to replace the revenue. And it's that time away from patients that's going to allow you to think about strategically the way to do that for your business.
That makes sense. Yeah,
this is yeah, this has been it's been fun, Sam. Little different conversation than we're used to, but yeah, this has been enjoyable, and it's been kind of fun being able to give a little bit of guidance, because typically we just kind of let our guests do all or most of the talking. So, thanks for flipping the script on us a little bit. But hey, we're pretty much out of time. But before we wrap up, I do want to have you tell us, how do people track you down, check you out, meet up with you. But just before we go there, any closing thoughts or anything you want to share with us before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, closing thoughts. Again, I was taking notes. I don't know if you guys saw how much I was writing down, but I mean, the biggest closing thought for me was just to say thanks to both of you guys. Like I said, family get-togethers are hard as a therapist because everyone wants to get free therapy from you. So I don't know how much that is for finance, for guys in your industry, but I thought, well, hey, I'm just going to do that to these guys here. So I just want, my biggest closing is, just thanks for, letting me ask some questions. It was hugely helpful for me too, and hopefully it's helpful for somebody else that's kind of in my shoes also. So. And I guess when it comes to getting a hold of me, I mean, our website is lvtmentalhealth.com. That's probably the quickest, easiest way to get a hold of us there. And it kind of has the bios of all the therapists that are there and what we specialize in and everything. But yeah, like I said, LVT, which is Las Vegas Therapy, lvtmentalhealth.com. So like I said, I appreciate it. Hopefully it's helpful for other people, but I know this is really helpful for me. So I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, absolutely, Sam. It was our pleasure. And we appreciate you making the time. And we certainly look forward to having you back on the show in 6 or 12 months and keeping us apprised of what you're up to, because we know you're going to do good things, man.
Okay, appreciate that.
All right. Thanks a lot for joining us, Sam.
Okay.
Thanks, Sam.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business RadioX and your favorite podcast.